Today, we're going to talk about something you see in politics all over the world. It's a pattern, really. It's a story about youthful passion, the quest for power, and what happens to that passion after all the votes are counted. We're looking at how the incredible energy of young people can become one of politics' most powerful and, sadly, most disposable resources.
Disposable chopsticks. Wow. Just think about that image for a second. That's how one source describes what can happen to young activists. They're seen as incredibly useful for one specific moment, and then just tossed aside. So today, we're asking, is this a real, recurring political trap?
Yeah, is this just a string of unfortunate coincidences, or is it a predictable, repeatable pattern? A cycle where the rebellious energy of young people is first celebrated and used to win power, only to be crushed by the very same people once they're in charge. Let's dig in and see. So why are young people always at the heart of this? Well, it's because that youthful energy, that fire, that desire for change, and that willingness to question everything, it's like rocket fuel for a political movement. If you're looking to shake things up, young people are this incredible force that can create massive political waves. And this right here is where the trap is set. It all boils down to this crucial switch. How does a passionate young activist go from being a celebrated asset, a hero of the movement, to suddenly being seen as a dangerous threat? And by the same people. It really happens in two phases. First, during a campaign, young people are a vital asset. They're the engine room, right? They bring the votes, the energy, the people on the street. But then, once that party gets into power, the switch just flips. That same energy, those same protests, are suddenly relabeled as a threat to law and order, something that needs to be controlled or even stamped out. Okay, so is this just a cynical theory? Well, let's look at the evidence. We've pulled together case studies from all over the globe that seem to show this isn't just a theory, it's a playbook. First up, we're heading to Bangladesh. This is a fascinating example because you can see the whole dynamic play out within a single political party. So during election time, the ruling Awami League party has its own student wing, the BCL, that acts as a youth machine to get out the vote. But get this. When other students held huge protests in recent years, who was right there with the police, attacking them? The BCL, the same student wing. The party literally weaponized one group of young people to suppress another. And this isn't just happening in one part of the world. Let's jump over to South Africa, a nation that was literally built on the power of youth-led protest. The historic fight against apartheid, it was carried on the backs of young activists. They were the absolute backbone of the movement for the ANC. But fast forward to 2015, a new generation of students protests, rising tuition fees, in the #FeesMustFall movement. And how did the ANC government respond? With a massive police crackdown and arrests. The heroes of the liberation struggle had become the suppressors. This playbook gets a modern twist, too. In Indonesia, President Jokowi was a master at using social media and pop culture to connect with and win over young voters. He mobilized them, got them excited, and they helped him win. But a little while later, when those same young people hit the streets to protest a controversial new labor law, the government's response wasn't a friendly social media post. It was swift and it was forceful. And you'd think maybe a university would be a safe space from this, right? Well, let's look at Turkey. The ruling AKP party originally came to power with a lot of support from its youth wings and conservative student networks. They were a key part of the base. But by 2021, when students at a major university protested a political appointee, the response wasn't dialogue. It was arrests, prosecutions, and even militarized security showing up on campus. And this isn't just something that happened in the past. This is playing out right now. Take a look at Kenya and the recent Hustler Nation campaign, which was all about empowering young, frustrated voters. And it worked. It was a huge success. But just a couple of years later, when Gen Z organized huge protests against new taxes, the response was unbelievably severe. We're talking massive police deployment and even reports of live ammunition being used. The very same group that was courted for their votes was now facing down the barrel of a gun. And here's the point that we really have to understand. It is so tempting to think, oh, this kind of thing only happens in authoritarian countries. But that's not true. As we've seen, even in democracies, the risk of being used and then discarded is very, very real. The methods might be a little different, but the trap is exactly the same. So, after seeing this pattern play out over and over again across different countries and political systems, it raises a huge question. If you're a young person and you want to make the world a better place, how do you even get involved in politics without falling for this? Well, it seems like the first step has to be caution.
So what's the big takeaway here? The warning is crystal clear. First, you have to recognize that young people can be used as political pawns. This disposable chopstick thing, it's a global phenomenon. And that means thinking critically isn't optional, it's essential. Before you pour all of your heart and soul into a movement, you have to ask those tough questions about the long-term goals of the people in charge. You have to ask yourself, am I a genuine partner in this? Or am I just a pawn in their game?
And that really leaves us with one final big question. The energy, the passion of a political movement, it can be intoxicating. It feels good to be a part of something big. The real challenge is, how do you hold on to that passion? How do you fight for what you believe in, while also keeping a clear enough head to avoid the trap? In other words, how do you stay passionate without becoming disposable?